When I was in junior high, I used to come to the bar here with my father at 14th and Grand River, 46, 41 Grand River, and it was called the Strand Lounge. And I would come on Sundays, and we would get here about 8 o'clock in the morning. We would go out for breakfast beforehand, and we'd come, and I would help clean up. Sometimes the janitor had a hangover, didn't show up till later, and I would have to do all his work, put up the chairs, sweep, mop, wax, load up the coolers, stack the beer bottles, and it was something I loved to do. I mean, there was a fantastic jukebox. The jukebox had all these great artists on there. It was James Brown, it was the Temptations, the Supremes, had Frank Sinatra, Otis Redding, and I would play the jukebox and I would shoot some pool. And there was a band that played on weekends, and they had all their equipment there, and I would play all the equipment. And it was just around the corner, right here on Grand River, and right on 14th Street around the corner was the 20 Grand nightclub. And they had all the biggest acts in town, the Supremes and some of the bigger people. And my father would get to spill over on the weekends. Anyways, well, I would try to come here every Sunday whenever I could to clean up. And then afterwards we would go out for lunch. And then we also would go, after the bar opened at noon, we would go to the shoe shine place, which is right about where I'm standing right now, which is empty now. There are a lot of stores that either were burned down or eventually knocked down. And as you can see, this area was it used to be a very vibrant area. There was a big furniture store there. There was another huge furniture store across the street. There was a bar called the Royal York, where Gates Brown, one of the Tiger Sluggers, used to drink. And right here was the shoe shine, and there was a small A&P, and there were some other shops. And then around the corner, there was a bank, and there were other shops, including a hair processing center that had about 8 or 10 chairs. So on July 23rd, 1967, 50 years ago, we came as normal. We came here to the bar. Now, it wasn't an absolute secret that there might one day be a riot in Detroit. In fact, the month before, one of my classmates in junior high in Oak Park, who was black, told me, a girl named Ruth English told me that I better watch out, better tell my people this summer that there's going to be trouble. And that was somewhere, early June, mid-June, and she was right. And so on that day, everything was normal. We went out for breakfast. We came over here. We started cleaning. And one of the things I always loved was my father carried a .38 caliber, and we would go in the bar, and the bathroom doors were always locked, and he was always worried about someone hiding overnight and trying to ambush him. So he would pull out his gun and kick open the doors. And I always thought that was like one of the coolest things. So on that day, we cleaned up, and then we went over to the shoe shine place. And the shoe shine place also happened to be a blind pig. They didn't know that my father knew, but they were selling liquor illegally, and people would come there and hang out. So we went there, we were getting our shoe shine, and I remember sitting on the shoe shine chair, looking down, and a woman's purse, there was a gun sitting there. And then everybody was talking about what was happening on 12th Street. The thing was just starting to get going, and everybody in the shoe shine place was talking about it. Usually we went home down 12th Street, and then to Finkel, and then down over to Schaefer. And this time my father said we better take the Lodge, and we took the Lodge home. And about 2 hours later, we got a call. We were sitting around the kitchen table, and everyone was kind of uptight, and my mother was uptight. And my father got a call from a bartender, which back then they called a barmaid. And she called and told my father, people are coming up the street. And my father said, okay, lock up, don't set the alarm. And that's what she did. Well, shortly after that, people broke into the bar. My father was pretty well liked in the neighborhood, and I think treated the employees pretty well. And so they didn't burn down the place, but they did tear it apart and loot it. So afterwards, it took about a month for him to reopen. And frankly, at that time, even at that age, I was about to go into 8th grade. at that age, I understood what was happening, and I wasn't angry. I understood there were a lot of inequities going on, and that was just sort of what was happening in the city. There, really across the country, in different parts of the country, there were riots or rebellions, and so my father reopened after about a month, and after that, really, I remember about a month after, we went out for dinner on a Sunday night, and we wanted to see what had happened to the city. And I remember it was just bumper to bumper on 12th Street, and it looked like mostly white suburbanites who had come down to see what had happened. And it was just devastating to see building after building just burned down. I mean, it really truly looked like a war. And nowadays, my father passed away at 97. He just passed away on February 17th on his birthday, and on the 50th anniversary of the riots. And he was living out in the suburbs, and I'm living in the city. And I would often come down Grand River to head out to his place at rush hour because I wanted to avoid the freeways. And it's really sometimes painful to see what's happened to Grand River, because Grand River is one of those cities one of the streets that really has never recovered. I mean, you can just go block after block of empty fields and boarded up stores. And even this area, which was really a vibrant place where people would come on Sunday to go furniture shopping, and that sort of ended. My father sold the bar about a year later, and he sold it to a gentleman who actually did a really nice job of remodeling and doing some really upgrades on the bar. But after about 3 years, he walked away from it, and that was the end of that. So it's interesting to come back, and it's really sort of a little bit heartbreaking at times where I drive down Grand River and I see what was. But I'm hoping I see some good things. I see the Grand River Creative Corridor. I see the furniture store over here is now turned into a place for art and parties, and so there is hope. But as I say, a lot of it is still pretty clear that Grand River is one of those streets that has not recovered from the riots.